Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 videocast here on YouTube. So this episode I'm calling the quotations, or I'm sorry, parentheses, the psychotic and sociopathic weaponization of the Holocaust by anti-vax right-wing activists. So psychotic and sociopathic weaponization, and then, so this is a general comment, or it's a take on this rather large and I think growing movement that's been stirred up by and harnessed by the Republican Party of anti-vaxxers and COVID denialists who are, as I mentioned in a previous episode about sabotage, that they're really engaged in a kind of political sabotage of the effort of the government to reduce and eliminate or stop the COVID-19 pandemic, okay? And get people vaccinated. So, and you know, also implement other public health measures like masking to reduce infection and reduce mortality and morbidity from the COVID-19 virus. And so there's a number of different aspects to it. It is harnessing a weird subculture, or that is becoming a political culture, or is becoming more of a politicized culture and more of an established part of both the Republican Party itself, and then also of the media infrastructure that really creates a lot of the conditions for the Republican Party to operate politically, and even dictates sometimes the talking points of that party through media hosts like Tucker Carlson or Fox, Fox and Friends, or Sean Hannity. But anyway, this particular, so there's been some incidents, like for instance, the mayor of Anchorage made comments about there were some anti-mask and also I think anti-vax activists in Anchorage, Alaska, who wore six-pointed yellow stars, like the Jewish people were applied to Jewish people by the Nazis as a form of, as part of their genocidal campaign to exterminate the Jews, and during the Second World War and just before. And so this symbol has been used a number of times. And so the anti-vax movement, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, had started to use some of these symbols to designate their sense of being persecuted for their views. In other words, that they feel like their objection to the public health measure of vaccination is a form of persecution, and for that matter, not just any persecution, some of the worst and most murderous persecutions that ever occurred. Not the only one, but that certainly has become a symbol, that of the Jews during the Second World War. And so, and there is also, because of the fact that we have some more historical documentation of that now than, for instance, even the Rwandan genocide that is more recent, or even more recent, the Rohingyan genocide, or efforts or attempted genocide in Burma. So anyway, this use of the symbol is obviously so I call it both psychotic and sociopathic. So this is the same two-level distinction that I've made to talk about the right-wing movement, or the far right-wing movement, the authoritarian movement, the neo-fascist movement, as having two levels of two different, personality types involved in it. One of them being the leadership. This is Bob Altermeyer's discovery in his psychological research, not of a couple decades ago, but it still applies, it seems, to the current right wing, that so that the leadership is sociopathic, and the followship, in my perception here, is wrapped up in a group psychosis. Okay, and so why do I call it psychotic? It's because this metaphor of that people who are unvaccinated are being persecuted like the Jews were persecuted during the Second World War, is that it's not basically the U.S. public health effort is an attempt to save the unvaccinated from being killed by this virus. They are more convinced that they'll be killed by the vaccination, which has that is a psychotic belief, or it's a mass psychosis, and that you have a groups who are creating documents in a pseudoscience that attempts to support this belief, this psychotic belief that a vaccine that has been approved by the FDA is going to damage people more than the virus that's or even that has been emergency authorized by the FDA, and that has been being recommended by 99% of physicians to be taken by people anywhere in the globe currently, to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, and to avoid the very, very dire potential effects of getting infected by the COVID-19 virus. So anyway, it's psychotic in that this is, it's on one level that simply that a vaccine is not going to be as nearly as damaging, if at all damaging, and it's going to actually prevent damage from or reduce damage from an infection by the COVID-19 virus. And there's reams of now data to support that, but that doesn't, the people involved in this psychosis are not able to absorb that information. They're not able to evaluate that information. So these are some of the followers, and they are, I think, to reference another video of mine, they are in what I would call a paranoid schizoid position, in that they feel like that they're in a world psychologically where they have this distrust of government. Now, government hasn't done a great deal of good things, and certainly in the pharmaceutical industry haven't done, especially with regard to finances, a great deal of good diplomatic work, let's say, to help people trust them, but this is way out of proportion. This movement creates about this particular offering of both the government and in terms of the public health initiative and the pharmaceutical companies that develop these vaccines. They happen to be one of the better products of the in terms of the cost, because it's covered, and also because of its effectiveness of this combined effort. So anyway, so this is a distortion of reality, okay, on that level. But then there's also distortion of reality of comparing it to the Holocaust. So this bespeaks a sense of great victimhood. The idea that one is that these people who are that there's a delusion of persecution and a delusion of victimhood as well. So, and this is a delusion of victimhood that is not unlike the sense of victimhood and that's being promoted by the Trumpist movement and by the Republicans more generally, but intensified by and made to the level of psychosis, I think, by Donald Trump and his followers and his operatives, also people who are helping him out, like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon and others. And so they're creating this environment where people are not trusting of reality and of trusting of, and also they have a sense already of being persecuted and of being victims, and that they are and that their victimhood makes them also and it's like, for instance, they feel like they're justified also in lashing out, okay, that they are such victims that they are justified in doing violent things, or because they are so persecuted. And so they're taking this moment of history, which was where the Jews were very much victims, were not, didn't have choices, or they didn't have many choices, and they were trapped in Europe, and they were then partially were killed, were murdered by the Nazi regime, and so this is a very extreme situation, that is a metaphor that people sometimes use as an example of that's extreme victimization. So anyway, so they're using that as a badge for this feeling they have of being victims themselves, that anything that doesn't, so this is where it gets very distorted and very psychotic, that anything that doesn't go their way exactly, in other words, that they can't live their life exactly as they want to, in terms of this pandemic comes up, and they don't want to deal with, they want to deny the reality that the pandemic is not real at all, or that they want to just ignore it somehow, and they don't want to be inconvenienced by getting a vaccine, which is a minor inconvenience, but it's such a level of entitlement, and so they've invented a whole the entitlement to basically to ignore, to deny reality. And it's an unfortunate reality. It's a reality I'm not enjoying, the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's not anything that it's nothing to celebrate. But there's some things that just you got to do, and there's some things that reality sometimes lemons. It serves you lemons, and you got to make lemonade out of it, or you got to. And so in this case, so I'm saying that this, even though people have reached in the past, including the anti-vax movement, to the Jewish persecution during the Holocaust as a way to gain sympathy, or gain and also to make an accusation that people they're opposing are Nazis. Okay, so this is where, and this is also a distortion, a psychotic distortion, that obviously the government it's not imposing a draconian. You have the choice also of being tested rather than getting vaccinated. In many cases, it depends on who you work for. It depends on which situation you're in. But anyway, but they are making and this is where a political argument. This is where we get to the sociopathic level. So there are people who reach to the metaphor of the Jewish persecution, or and the Holocaust. Let's call it the Holocaust, to or abbreviate it by saying the Holocaust. They reach to the Holocaust to as a way to create a political opportunity for themselves. So this is where it becomes sociopathic. In other words, there are some people who may feel so persecuted that they feel what they think are like Jewish people who, and actually, by the way, the mayor of Anchorage said that Jewish people should be honored to think that their experience is being used by the anti-vax movement. And obviously, this is, I mean, some of my elder relatives were killed in the Holocaust, and so, I mean, I personally am offended by that, but this goes beyond I'm trying to make a case that it doesn't depend on whether you care about my sense of offense, for that matter, or other Jewish people's sense of offense. I mean, I wish that you did care about that, and you should care about that, but to some degree or whatever. But people should be concerned about their level of distortion of reality, their own level of distortion of reality, and their own victimization of other people. So anyway, so let me just complete this argument about sociopathy. So there are operators who, like Tucker Carlson, or there's a fellow who made a video based on one of Joe Rogan's speeches about freedom that used imagery from the Holocaust as a metaphor, or as a visual metaphor, for what the Biden administration is doing, or trying to do to quell the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, and given people, trying to convince people via mandates, via whatever, education, to get vaccinated. And so there's a level in which there are people who recognize that this is an opportunity to manipulate the political valence, or the political meaning of the Holocaust and of the Jewish experience of persecution during the Second World War, and before and after, but particularly during that period, and using it as a tool to as a tool to gain power over, by putting their political opponents on the defensive, and by just selecting it off sort of the shelf of like bad things, okay, and that they see that as a way to, and also it's a way even more on a psychopathic level, even, to try to defuse and cheapen the Jewish experience of being persecuted by Nazis, okay, who are close relatives to the people who use this. In other words, so the neo-fascist movement, who contain within them anti-Semites, and they've talked about the Jews will not replace us, and so forth and so on. And so there's anti-Semitism, real anti-Semitism on the right wing, in particular in the United States today. So, and also in other countries. But anyway, so, and which the psychotic, the paranoid schizoid position, there's a way in which all of these ideas blend together in this other sort of unconscious stew. But anyway, for the right wing, when people are in this kind of irrational fear mode of being irrationally fearful and withdrawn, okay, and so, but anyway, there are people who are on the right wing who are admirers of Hitler and who are trying to emulate the Nazis, but they call other people Nazis. They're trying to project onto other people, preemptively project onto other people, the dastardly and evil deeds of the Nazis, so that they might also exempt themselves from not to deflect from themselves their own tendencies in that direction. And there is a confluence between in the anti-vax movement and also anti-Semitism and fascism and right-wing. It's become part of the stew of these beliefs that are part of what I am calling the paranoid schizoid position of the right wing in the United States and some other places. So anyway, I know I'm throwing around some psychological terminology. I hope it wasn't too technical sounding, and it's not. Some of it is a little bit hard to I'm trying to describe states of mind that are extreme, also politics as extreme, but I think that we have an obligation as citizens to try to look in the face of what's going on, and to keep not to lose sight of what is essentially evil in some form or other, in my opinion, and some of it unconscious evil in the sense of not intentional, but just people who are disturbed people who are acting out their disturbance in ways that is destructive to them, and then also potentially destructive, or it is also destructive to our common political discourse and our common public understanding of things and public ability to, as a group, to act on stopping the COVID-19 pandemic, also on other big public policy or big initiatives that we need to do, and we need to meet as some form of a team, some form of a cooperating group of people who live in the same area and live on the same planet. So anyway, please comment below if you have any reactions or ideas that have been inspired by any of what I've said in this video, or thoughts. And also please like the video if you like this particular video, and also please subscribe if you're enjoying the content here on Politics 2100. So I will see you in the next video.